When you think of a trip to Europe, you probably imagine booking flights, packing bags, and spending thousands of dollars to get there. Germany, Denmark, the Netherlands, cobblestone streets, old-world architecture, festivals that have been running for centuries. But here's something most people don't know. You don't have to leave the United States to experience any of that. Scattered across America are towns that made a bold, almost unbelievable decision. They looked at a foreign country, its buildings, its food, its culture, and said, "We're going to become that." And the strangest part? It worked. Tourists started pouring in, millions of them, year after year. Today, we're counting down 5 American towns that copied a foreign country and pulled it off completely. And trust me, the story behind the town at number 1 is one of the most surprising things you'll hear about any small town in America. Number 5. Helen, Georgia. Copied Germany. At first glance, Helen looks like a small mountain town tucked into the Blue Ridge Mountains of northern Georgia. Population, just about 500 residents. A quiet valley, a river running through the middle, forests on every side. But the moment you drive into town, something feels completely wrong, in the best possible way. Cobblestone streets, gingerbread-trimmed buildings, facades painted in the warm yellows and greens of a Bavarian village. It looks like someone picked up a small German town and dropped it in the Georgia mountains, and that's almost exactly what happened. Back in 1969, Helen was dying. The timber industry had collapsed, businesses were closing, and the town had almost nothing left to offer. 3 local businessmen made one last desperate move. They hired a local artist named John Kolek, gave him a handful of photographs of German alpine towns, and asked him to reimagine Helen from the ground up. Within months, buildings had new facades, new signs, new identity. A failing logging town had become a Bavarian village in the American South. Here's what defines Helen today. Visitors per year, over 4 million. Location, northeastern Georgia in the Blue Ridge Mountains. Known for Bavarian architecture, Oktoberfest, Christmas markets, and tubing on the Chattahoochee River. Despite having fewer than 600 residents, Helen is now the 3rd most visited destination in the entire state of Georgia. A traveler once wrote online, "I pulled into Helen not knowing what to expect, and genuinely thought I'd taken a wrong turn into Europe." Imagine arriving here on an October evening. The air is cool and mountain crisp. Polka music drifts out of open restaurant doors. The street glows with warm light bouncing off painted Bavarian facades, and the smell of schnitzel and warm pretzels fills the entire block. You're in Georgia, but it doesn't feel like it. That combination, a completely invented identity planted inside the American South, is exactly why millions of people make the drive out here every year. But the next town on our list didn't invent its identity, it carried one across an ocean. Number 4. Pella, Iowa. Copied the Netherlands. At first glance, Pella looks like a quiet Midwestern town sitting in the middle of Iowa farmland. Population, about 10,000 residents. Flat land, wide streets. Not much to suggest anything unusual is happening here. Then you see the windmill. Standing over 124 feet tall at the center of town is a working Dutch grain mill, built in the Netherlands in the 1850s style, shipped across the Atlantic piece by piece, and reassembled right here in Iowa. It is the largest working windmill in North America, and it's just the beginning. Because Pella wasn't designed to look Dutch, it actually is. In 1847, around 800 Dutch immigrants fled the Netherlands to escape religious persecution. They traveled across the Atlantic and settled here in Iowa, naming their new home after a city in ancient Jordan that had served as a place of refuge. They brought Dutch architecture, Dutch food, Dutch traditions, and Dutch stubbornness, and 178 years later, it's all still here. Here's what defines Pella. Visitors per year, hundreds of thousands. Location, central Iowa, about 40 miles southeast of Des Moines. Known for the Vermeer Windmill, Dutch architecture, and the Tulip Time Festival. That festival alone draws over 150,000 visitors in a single weekend every May to a town of 10,000 people. A visitor once described it as the most authentically foreign place I've ever been to inside America. Imagine walking through Pella in early May. Every street is lined with tulips in full bloom, red, yellow, purple, stretching in every direction. Dutch dancers in traditional costumes perform in the town square. The giant windmill turns slowly overhead, and everything around you is real, not a recreation, not a theme park. A living Dutch community that simply never stopped being Dutch. That's what makes Pella different from every other town on this list. It didn't copy a foreign country, it just never forgot where it came from. But the next town on our list had to work a lot harder for that same result. Number 3, Solvang, California, copied Denmark. At first glance, Solvang looks like something that shouldn't exist. A town of about 6,000 people sitting in California wine country, 45 minutes north of Santa Barbara, and it looks exactly like Denmark. 4 working windmills, half-timbered houses with thatched rooftops, a replica of Copenhagen's famous Little Mermaid statue, a round tower modeled after the one in Denmark's capital, and bakeries on every block selling Ebleskiver, Kringle, and butter cookies made from recipes that are generations old. Like Pella, Solvang was founded by Danish immigrants, 3 educators who purchased 9,000 acres of California land in 1911 to build a Danish community far from the harsh Midwestern winters. For decades, it looked like any other California town. Then, in 1947, everything changed. Local residents made a decision to redesign the town's buildings in a distinctly Danish style. Half-timbered facades, steep-gabled roofs, the windmills. That same year, a feature article in the Saturday Evening Post called it "a little piece of Denmark in California." Tourists started arriving almost immediately, and they haven't stopped since. Here's what defines Solvang. Visitors per year, over 2 million. Location, Santa Ynez Valley, Santa Barbara County, California. Known for Danish architecture, windmills, bakeries, and wine tasting. Major events, Danish Days Festival every September, the Julefest Winter Celebration, and the Taste of Solvang Food and Wine Festival. Danish royalty has visited 3 times. The town calls itself the Danish capital of America. A traveler once said, "I walked into a bakery in Solvang and genuinely forgot I was in California." Imagine stepping onto Copenhagen Drive on a warm California morning. The scent of fresh pastries drifts from the bakeries. 4 windmills rise above the rooftops. Hans Christian Andersen looks out at you from a bronze statue in the square. The Santa Ynez Mountains frame the whole scene like a painting. It's sunny and 72 degrees. In Denmark, that is Solvang, and 2 million people a year come here to experience it. But our next town went even further, and the results are almost impossible to believe. Number 2, Frankenmuth, Michigan. Copied Bavaria, Germany. At first glance, Frankenmuth looks like a Bavarian village sitting in the middle of Michigan farmland. Timber-framed buildings, flower boxes hanging from every window, a covered wooden bridge over the Cass River built in the style of Germany's Black Forest, and a Christmas store so large it takes most people 2 hours just to walk through it. Here's what makes Frankenmuth extraordinary. This isn't a gimmick. It's not a theme park. It's a real town with deep German roots, and it has gone further than almost anywhere in America to preserve them. Frankenmuth was founded in 1845 by a group of German Lutheran immigrants from the Franconia region of Bavaria. They built their town the way they knew how. German architecture, German food, German language, which remained the town's primary language well into the 20th century. Over generations, instead of fading away, that identity was deliberately deepened. Today, even the local McDonald's and CVS are designed to look Bavarian. The town holds the first Oktoberfest outside Germany ever officially sanctioned by the city of Munich. And Bronner's Christmas Wonderland, the world's largest Christmas store, spans over 320,000 square feet and attracts visitors from every state in the country. Here's what defines Frankenmuth. Visitors per year, over 3 million. Location, Saginaw County, Michigan, about 90 miles north of Detroit. Population, just under 5,000 residents. Known for Bavarian architecture, world-famous family-style chicken dinners, Bronner's Christmas Wonderland, and Oktoberfest. Named Travel and Leisure's best small town for families in America, a traveler once put it simply, Frankenmuth feels like Bavaria decided to set up shop in Michigan and just never left. Imagine walking into Bronner's on a December afternoon. You step through the doors and suddenly you're surrounded by over 100,000 Christmas ornaments. Trees stretch to the ceiling. Every display case glows. Christmas music plays in every corner of a store the size of 4 football fields. Then you step back outside into a snow-covered Bavarian street in Michigan. That's Frankenmuth. And 3 million people make the trip every year to experience it. But everything about Frankenmuth makes sense once you know its history. Germans founded it, Germans built it, Germans kept it alive. The town at number 1 had none of that. No heritage, no immigrant roots, no reason at all to look like Europe. And yet, it does. Number 1, Leavenworth, Washington. Copied Bavaria, Germany. At first glance, Leavenworth looks like a Bavarian alpine village tucked into the Cascade Mountains of Washington state. Wooden balconies painted in rich reds and greens, Alpine-style buildings with steep peaked roofs, flower baskets hanging from every storefront, mountains rising up in every direction. It looks like it has been here for centuries, like it grew naturally out of the landscape the same way a real Bavarian village would. But here's the truth, none of it is real. In the early 1960s, Leavenworth was a town in freefall. The railroad had rerouted away from it, the sawmill had shut down, businesses were closing, the population was shrinking. There was nothing special about Leavenworth. No national park nearby, no natural wonder, no famous landmark. Just a small, struggling mountain town that the rest of the world had stopped paying attention to. So a group of locals made one of the most audacious bets in the history of American small towns. They decided to transform Leavenworth completely, not partially, not cosmetically, completely. Every building in the commercial district would be redesigned in the style of a Bavarian alpine village. New facades, new signage, new festivals, a new identity built from scratch. For a town with zero German heritage, the gamble paid off beyond anything they could have imagined. Here's what defines Leavenworth today. Visitors per year, over 2 million. Location, Cascade Mountains, Washington State, about 2 hours east of Seattle. Population, only about 2,400 residents. Known for Bavarian-style architecture, Oktoberfest, and the Christmas Lighting Festival, one of the most famous Christmas celebrations in the entire United States. Major draws include river rafting, hiking, and year-round festivals that fill every weekend of the calendar. A traveler once wrote, "I kept having to remind myself I was still in Washington. My brain refused to believe it. Imagine arriving in Leavenworth in December. Snow sits deep on the rooftops. Every building in the village is covered in lights, over 500,000 of them, glowing warm gold against the white mountains. A choir sings in the town square. The smell of bratwurst and mulled wine drifts through the cold air. The entire village feels like a Christmas postcard from Bavaria. And then you remember, none of this existed 60 years ago. A group of people simply decided it would. That's what makes Leavenworth the most remarkable town on this list. Helen had desperation, Solvang and Pella had heritage, Frankenmuth had generations of real German culture to build on, Leavenworth had nothing, and somehow that makes what it became even more incredible. It proves something worth remembering. You don't need history, you don't need roots, you just need a bold enough idea and the willingness to go all in. From a dying Georgia logging town to a Dutch community that crossed an ocean, from a Danish village in California wine country to a Bavarian city in Michigan, and finally to a mountain town in Washington that invented itself from scratch, these 5 places prove that identity is more powerful than almost anything else a town can offer. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more stories about the most surprising, most unexpected, and most fascinating places across America. The next video might just change where you decide to take your next road trip.